A corpse leaves the battlefield, but a wounded soldier cripples an army. Before the world even heard the first S-mine detonate, German planners were secretly designing a weapon to break not bodies, but morale, and it would fill field hospitals and haunt survivors long after the war. Why did Germany invest in the weapon soldiers feared more than tanks? The answer begins with the hidden logic of maiming. Wounding. A soldier is a force multiplier. One casualty on the battlefield demands a chain of resources: stretcher bearers, medics, trucks, hospital beds, surgeons, blood, and bandages. Every wounded man ties up at least 2 or 3 more, pulling them out of the fight and into the relentless machinery of evacuation and care. The S-mine was engineered with this logic in mind. It was not meant to clear a path with sheer destruction, but to create a ripple of suffering that would spread far beyond the blast. When a soldier lost a leg or was torn open at the waist, the pain did not end with him. His screams, the rush to save him, the sight of the wounds, these things gnawed at the nerves of everyone nearby. Fear grew in the silence after the explosion, as men wondered if the next step would end their own war. The true weapon was not the steel fragments, but the uncertainty and dread they left behind. The S-mine's legacy began as a calculation, not how many enemies it could kill, but how many it could haunt. In a war where armies measured strength in divisions, the Germans understood that a single wounded survivor could drain the will and resources of an entire unit. That was the economics of wounds, a weapon designed to cripple not just bodies, but the spirit of an army. Versailles had left Germany with a hollowed-out army, stripped of tanks and heavy guns, watched by foreign inspectors. But behind locked doors and under false paperwork, a new kind of weapon was taking shape. German ordnance planners, working in secret from the early 1930s, faced a simple arithmetic problem: how to defend borders without enough men to hold them. Their answer was a device that could do a soldier's job without ever sleeping: a silent sentry buried in the earth, ready to act on its own. Research and development moved quietly, sidestepping treaty restrictions by disguising military work as civilian engineering. Factories that once made farm tools or industrial parts now produced prototypes for a new generation of mines. By 1935, as Europe edged closer to war, the S-mine was ready for service. It could be planted by the hundreds along a frontier, each one a hidden guard that needed no food, no rest, no orders. The mine's existence was kept out of public view, its true role understood only by a handful of engineers and officers. In the files of Germany's ordnance offices, the S-mine was more than a weapon. It was a solution to a political problem built for a nation that had to fight with one hand tied behind its back. The silent sentry would soon make its presence felt, not by marching, but by waiting. A buried S-mine waits for pressure or a tripwire to trigger its mechanism. The sequence starts with a click, almost too quiet to notice, then a delay of about 4 seconds. Beneath the soil, a small propellant charge ignites, launching the mine upward. In less than half a second, the metal cylinder reaches waist height, roughly 1 meter above the ground. That is where the real damage is done. At this height, the mine bursts open with a charge of about 182 grams of TNT. Around 360 steel balls, rods, and shards blast outward in every direction, forming a horizontal ring of shrapnel. German technical manuals calculated a lethal radius of 20 meters, with the potential to wound at distances up to 100 meters. The design is not random. It is tailored to the anatomy of a marching soldier. The fragments are aimed at thighs, pelvis, and abdomen, places where wounds almost always mean permanent disability. The mine's weight, just over 4 kilograms, and its compact size, about 13 centimeters tall, made it easy for engineers to plant by the thousands. Its engineering is precise, almost clinical. The S-mine does not just explode, it leaps, pauses, and then sprays its fragments at the level where a soldier is most vulnerable, turning a patch of earth into a trap that could cripple a squad in seconds. September 1939. French infantry moved through the valleys and forests of the Saar, probing for weak spots in the German line. They expected resistance, maybe machine gun fire, maybe artillery, but what they found was something else entirely. A patrol would press forward, boots sinking into soft earth, when a faint metallic click would break the silence. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, out of the ground, a metal cylinder would leap waist-high and burst in a ring of steel. Shrapnel tore through uniforms and flesh, catching men in the thighs, the pelvis, the abdomen. The ground itself had become an enemy. The effect was immediate. French reports described advances halted not by gunfire, but by invisible traps. Medics scrambled to save men with wounds no field dressing could contain. The survivors spoke of the terror that gripped them after the first blast, the knowledge that every step could trigger another. In the ranks, a new name spread for this unseen adversary, le soldat silencieux, the silent soldier. It did not sleep, it did not miss. It waited, and it struck without warning or mercy. By September 11th, the French push into the Saar had stalled. The cost was not measured in territory gained or lost, but in the number of men left screaming on the forest floor. The S-mine had proven itself, not as a weapon of mass destruction, but as a weapon of mass paralysis. The message was clear: the battle could be lost to fear alone. State-run factories across Germany recorded the numbers in ledgers and shipping manifests. Over 1.93 million S-mines produced between 1935 and 1945. Each mine was small enough to hold in two hands, yet multiplied into millions, they became a physical barrier stretching from the French countryside to the Baltic coast. By the time Allied troops landed in Normandy in 1944, the S-mine was no longer just a single trap hidden in the earth. It had become part of a system, a layered defense built to slow, bleed, and paralyze any advance. German manuals detailed how to weave S-mines with anti-tank mines so that a disabled vehicle became a lure, drawing desperate crews straight into the kill zone. Infantry assault units found themselves funneled by barbed wire and obstacles, forced into narrow lanes seeded with mines. The S-mine's presence was constant, its threat magnified by the sheer density. Some fields held hundreds in a single hectare. Every step forward risked triggering a chain reaction, not just of explosions, but of panic and hesitation. The Atlantic Wall's strength was not just in concrete bunkers, but in these silent sentries, waiting for the next invasion force. When the guns fell silent in May 1945, the danger beneath the soil remained. In Denmark alone, more than 1.3 million mines, many of them S-mines, waited in the sand and fields, a final legacy of occupation. The task of clearing them fell to German prisoners of war, most of them young men, handed over to the Allies and to Danish authorities. Their work was slow and brutal. Every probe into the ground could mean the end. Between May and September 1945, the cost was staggering: 149 killed, 165 left with severe wounds, and 167 more lightly injured. Each number stands for a body torn or a life forever changed, years after the war was supposed to be over. The S-mine's design did not die with the Reich. Its blueprints were studied and copied. The United States M16 bounding mine and the Soviet OZM series both trace their origins to the same cruel logic: bounding, airburst, fragmentation. Even decades later, the threat persists. The 1997 Ottawa Treaty banned anti-personnel mines, but the United States, Russia, and China have refused to sign. Paper treaties expire, but the weapons stay in the ground. In the end, a device meant to defend a border outlived borders themselves. Weapons have shelf lives on paper. In soil, they have an afterlife. Today, more than 60 countries still face deadly minefields, often using direct descendants of this design. The logic of wounding, not killing, quietly endures. Until every last mine is cleared, the battlefield lingers beneath civilian feet. War's cruelest inventions outlast the wars themselves, Share your thoughts below.